Let me tell you something that's going to challenge the way you think. A woman's power doesn't always come from what she shows. It often comes from what she hides. Not in a manipulative way, not in a dishonest way, but in a way that protects her peace, her dignity, and her heart. Because when you lay everything out on the table too soon, you risk being misunderstood, taken for granted, or even losing the very mystery that makes you unforgettable. And today, I'm going to share with you 7 things a woman must always keep guarded from a man, no matter how much she cares for him. Let's talk about insecurities, because this is where so many women give away their power without even realizing it. We all have them, every single one of us. Those quiet little fears, the doubts that whisper in the back of your mind when you're standing in front of the mirror, or when you're comparing yourself to someone else, or when you replay a mistake from years ago and still feel the sting. They're there, and they're real. But here's the mistake too many women make. They hand those insecurities over to a man too quickly, almost as if they're asking him to take care of them, or worse, to validate them. And when you do that, you give away something that should always remain yours to manage and yours to protect. The truth is, not every man knows what to do with your insecurities. Sometimes he'll mean well, but he won't understand the weight of what you've just shared. Other times, and this is the harsh reality, those insecurities might get thrown back at you in an argument, used as a weapon in moments of anger or immaturity. And even if that never happens, the simple act of overexposing your deepest doubts can shift the balance of how he sees you. Instead of recognizing your strength, he begins to focus on your fragility. Instead of seeing your wholeness, he sees the cracks you pointed out for him. Now, don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying you can't ever be vulnerable or that you should never open up about the things that weigh on your heart. Vulnerability is powerful when it's earned. But that's the key. It has to be earned. It can't be something you throw on the table after a few conversations, after a few dates, or even after a short stretch of time together. Because vulnerability without trust isn't strength, it's exposure. And exposure without protection can leave you wounded in ways that are hard to heal. When you keep your insecurities guarded, what you're really doing is protecting your self-respect. You're saying, I know what I struggle with, I know where I doubt myself, but those struggles don't define me, and they don't need to be validated by anyone else to be real. That's powerful. That's attractive, because what a man respects most isn't a woman who spills every hidden fear. It's a woman who has enough composure to carry herself with confidence, even while those insecurities exist. He doesn't have to know every detail about what keeps you up at night to admire the way you walk with strength in the daylight. Think about it, mystery has always been part of attraction. It's not about playing games, it's about not laying your entire soul bare to someone who hasn't proven they can handle it. When you show restraint, you create curiosity. When you protect your insecurities, you remind him that you're not a puzzle he can solve in a single night. You're a journey, a depth, a story that unfolds slowly. And that keeps him invested, keeps him intrigued, keeps him respecting the boundaries you've set. And here's the most important part. By keeping those insecurities to yourself, you give yourself the space to work through them without relying on someone else to fix them for you. Because no man, no matter how much he loves you, can heal the parts of you that only you can heal. That's your work. That's your responsibility. And when you own it, when you carry it with quiet strength, it speaks louder than any confession ever could. So remember this, your insecurities don't have to be hidden because they're shameful. They have to be hidden because they're sacred, and sacred things aren't handed out freely. They're protected, preserved, and revealed only when the time, the trust, and the person are right. The past has a way of following us, doesn't it? It shows up in memories, in scars, in lessons we wish we didn't have to learn. Every woman has a history, just like every man does, and there's nothing wrong with that. What becomes dangerous is when you feel like you owe a man every detail of it. that somehow to prove your honesty or your loyalty, you have to walk him through every mistake you've ever made, every heartbreak you've ever endured, every decision you regret. But here's the truthy, your past doesn't need to be his property. It doesn't need to sit on the table in front of him like a checklist he gets to approve or judge. The woman you are today is not the woman you once were. You've grown. You've learned. You've healed in places where you were once broken. The person who walks into his life now has been shaped by those experiences, yes, but she is not defined by them. And if you start pouring out every detail of your past too soon, you run the risk of being seen through the lens of who you used to be instead of who you are right now. Some men can't separate the two. Some men will hold you hostage to mistakes you've already outgrown. And that's why it's essential to keep parts of your past guarded. It's not about hiding the truth. It's about understanding that not every truth deserves to be handed over freely. Because sometimes, when you share too much too soon, you're not actually building intimacy, you're giving him ammunition. And it's not always intentional, but when tempers flare, when insecurities rise, when immaturity takes over, suddenly those vulnerable confessions about your past become sharp edges that cut you down. That's why wisdom says, protect your history until you know the man standing in front of you values your present more than he judges your past. What matters most is not what you went through, but how you came out of it. That's the version of you he needs to see, the resilient woman, the strong woman, the woman who has risen from what she's endured. And if he's worthy, if he proves himself over time, then and only then do you decide how much of that story you want to share. You choose. Not because you have to, not because you fear being exposed, but because you feel safe enough to. That choice belongs to you. And here's another layer to it. Sometimes when you overexpose your past, you accidentally plant seeds of insecurity in him. Maybe you tell him about an ex you once loved deeply, and now he's comparing himself in ways he never would have. Maybe you reveal mistakes you've made, and now he's looking at you through a filter you didn't intend. It doesn't mean he's a bad man, it means he's human. And humans, by nature, can struggle to separate what they know from what they feel. Why give him battles he doesn't need to fight? Why give him shadows that don't belong in your present? Holding back parts of your past doesn't make you dishonest. It makes you wise. It makes you intentional. It means you understand that not everything about you is meant to be placed in someone else's hands. Some chapters were only written for you to carry, to learn from, and to rise beyond. And those chapters don't need to be read aloud for someone to know your worth. So guard your past. Let it be the soul that grew you, not the chains that bind you. Because the right man won't need every page of your history to love you. He'll only need to see the woman you've become. Money has a strange way of shifting the dynamics between people. It can bring out generosity, but it can also bring out control, insecurity, or even resentment. And this is why a woman must be careful about how much of her financial world she reveals to a man. Not because she has anything to hide, but because her independence, her sense of stability, is something that should never be handed over lightly. When you let a man know every detail of your bank account, your debts, your savings, your struggles, or your advantages, you're giving him information that could easily change the way he treats you, consciously or unconsciously. Think about it. If a man knows you have more money than he does, it can bruise his ego. Suddenly, instead of feeling like a partner, he might start feeling inadequate, comparing himself against your success, questioning his role, or even trying to compete with you. If a man knows you have less money, he may feel superior, or he may take on the role of savior, assuming that you need him to rescue you. Neither of those dynamics create the kind of balance and respect that a relationship should have. That's why financial privacy is not about secrecy, it's about preserving the power of equality. Finances are deeply tied to freedom. When a woman has her own money, her own plan, her own independence, she can make decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. But the moment she exposes too much, especially to someone who hasn't yet earned her trust. She risks losing that strength. She risks being pressured, judged, or even manipulated. And it doesn't always happen in extreme ways. It can be subtle. A comment about how you spend, a judgment about what you save, a question about why you make the financial decisions you do. All of these things can begin to chip away at your autonomy. There's also something very powerful about not being predictable. When a man doesn't know everything about your financial situation, he can't define your value by it. He can't assume your choices or your needs. It forces him to connect with you for who you are, not for what you have or what you lack. That mystery is protective, but it's also healthy because it ensures that the relationship is built on connection, not on transactions. Now, I'm not saying you should never talk about money in a relationship. When there is trust, commitment, and long-term vision, financial conversations become necessary. But those conversations should happen when the foundation is strong enough to carry them, not in the early stages when emotions are still uncertain and motives are still proving themselves. Timing matters. Just like with insecurities, just like with the past, this part of you has to be earned. When you keep your finances guarded, you're not just protecting your bank account, you're protecting your freedom of choice. You're ensuring that you can walk away if you need to without fear of being trapped. You're making sure that your worth isn't tied to a number, whether that number is high or low. Because at the end of the day, your financial independence is one of the greatest tools you have to maintain your dignity and your power. So never feel guilty for keeping that part of yourself private until the right time. Your money, your security, your independence, they are yours to manage, not someone else's to control. And the man who is truly worthy of you will never need to know every detail of what you have. He'll simply respect the woman you are with or without it. There's something sacred about the conversations you have with the people closest to you. The late night talks with your best friend, the heartfelt advice from your mother, the private moments with your siblings. Those aren't just words, they're bonds. They're pieces of trust that have been built over years, sometimes over a lifetime. And here's the mistake too many women make. They start letting a man into those spaces too quickly. They share things their family told them in confidence. They repeat things their friends confessed in vulnerability, and suddenly, those sacred bonds are no longer protected. What you have to realize is that not everything that comes into your ears is meant to leave your lips. When someone you love shares their struggles, their stories, or even their secrets, they are trusting you. That trust is not transferable. It doesn't automatically extend to the man you're dating or even to the man you love. And when you start passing along those confidences, you're not just breaking trust with your inner circle. You're teaching a man that your boundaries are loose, that what is told to you in private doesn't always stay protected. That can plant a seed of doubt about how you'd handle his vulnerabilities too. There's also a deeper layer to this. When you start revealing too much of what your family thinks or what your friends say, you unintentionally allow those voices to enter your relationship. Instead of standing on your own judgment, you create a space where your man feels like he's being watched, weighed, or even criticized by people who aren't in the room. That can cause tension. It can make him defensive, or worse, it can make him feel like he's not truly with you, but with a committee of opinions that you've carried into the relationship. And nothing weakens a connection faster than feeling like it's never just the two of you. Protecting your inner circle doesn't mean you shut your partner out completely. It means you use discernment. You decide what details actually need to be shared and what details are sacred. If your friend is going through something personal, that's not your partner's business. If your family has private struggles, those aren't stories to casually hand over. You can still talk about the general lessons, the feelings, or even the wisdom you've gained from those relationships. But the intimate details belong to the people who trusted you with them. And here's where the beauty of this boundary really shows up. When you protect your inner circle, you actually gain more respect from a man because he sees that you know how to honor trust. He sees that you're not careless with people's stories, that you understand the weight of what's private. That makes you more trustworthy in his eyes because if you can protect the confidences of your family and friends, he knows you'll protect his too. Relationships thrive on respect, and respect is born from boundaries. By guarding the private conversations of your inner circle, you set a standard that says, I don't give away what doesn't belong to me. That standard carries over into every part of your relationship. It creates a culture of safety where he doesn't have to fear that every word he says will be passed along to someone else. And it creates balance because he learns to stand on his own with you without the shadow of outside voices guiding every step. So never feel like you have to share every detail of what others tell you in order to connect with a man. Protecting those confidences doesn't make you distant. It makes you strong. It shows that you know the difference between intimacy and intrusion. And the man who's truly right for you won't need access to those sacred spaces to love you. He'll only need to know that you value trust enough to protect it. One of the most powerful things a woman can hold on to in a relationship is her sense of direction, her next move. The dreams she's chasing, the plans she's quietly building, the steps she knows she wants to take long before anyone else sees them. Too often, though, women feel the need to reveal every detail of what they're working toward. They lay out the blueprint of their future, they announce the timing of their goals, and they give a man the full script of their next chapter as if he's entitled to it. But here's the truth: not every move you're about to make needs to be shared. In fact, some of your greatest power comes from keeping those plans close until they're ready to be seen. The moment you tell someone your every intention, you open the door for opinions, doubts, and distractions. You may not mean to, but you invite commentary on something that was never meant to be debated. A man might question your choices, offer unsolicited advice, or even unintentionally discourage you. And suddenly, instead of moving forward with clarity, you're second guessing yourself. That's why guarding your next move is not about secrecy. It's about protection. It's about keeping your vision safe from outside influence until it's strong enough to stand on its own. There's also something magnetic about mystery. When you don't reveal every step before you take it, you create a sense of intrigue. You remind a man that you are not fully predictable, that there's more to discover about you, more to admire. It's not about playing games. It's about carrying yourself with enough self-respect to know that your life is not a book anyone gets to read cover to cover without your permission. Mystery keeps the spark alive. It keeps him invested, not because he's trying to control your moves, but because he's inspired by the way you move with quiet confidence. And let's be honest, sometimes the best moves are the ones no one saw coming. The promotion you didn't announce, the project you kept private, the personal growth you pursued without seeking applause. Those are the moments that define you. And when you reveal them only after they've been achieved, they carry more weight. Instead of saying, "This is what I plan to do," you get to stand in the strength of, "This is what I've done." That's a different kind of power, and it earns a different kind of respect. There's also a deeper truth here. By keeping your next move private, you remind yourself that you don't need validation to move forward. Too many women fall into the trap of sharing their plans because they're hoping for approval. They want to hear, "That's a great idea," or "I support you," before they take action. But the strongest women are the ones who don't wait for that. They act because they know their worth. They trust their instincts. They don't ask for permission to grow. That mindset not only keeps your independence intact, it also makes you even more attractive, because a man sees that your drive comes from within, not from external applause. So understand this: your next move is yours to guard. It doesn't mean you never share your dreams with someone who's earned that space. It means you don't hand over your playbook to anyone who hasn't proven they can handle it. You don't reveal every step, every timeline, every plan just to fill the silence. You keep what's sacred close until the time is right. Because at the end of the day, the woman who moves with quiet intention is the woman who commands respect without even asking for it. There's a side of every woman that very few people ever see. It's the part of her that shows up when the weight gets too heavy, when the world feels like it's closing in, when she's holding it together on the outside but feels like she's crumbling on the inside. That's her breaking point. And as much as a man may care for you, as much as he may want to understand everything about you, that is not a place you should hand over easily. Because once a man knows exactly where you fall apart, once he sees the exact moment when you lose your strength, you've given him a roadmap to your most fragile self. And not every man can handle that kind of knowledge with the respect it deserves. Some will mean well, but won't know what to do with it. They'll panic, they'll try to fix you, or they'll smother you in ways that don't actually help. Others may, whether consciously or not, use that information as leverage, knowing how far to push, knowing exactly which buttons will leave you undone. And even if he never does, the reality is, once you expose your breaking point, you shift the dynamic. Instead of being seen as the woman who holds her own, you risk being seen as the woman who needs to be held up. There's nothing wrong with needing support, but there is a difference between leaning on someone and surrendering the very core of your resilience. The strength of a woman isn't that she never breaks. It's that she knows how to bend without snapping. It's that she finds ways to retreat, recover, and rebuild herself when no one else is watching. And that's why your breaking point should remain private. Not because you're trying to be untouchable, but because your healing is sacred. The moments you cry behind closed doors, the nights you pray for strength, the silent battles you fight with yourself, those belong to you. They're not for public display, and they're certainly not for someone else to measure your worth by. There's a quiet power in handling your lowest moments privately. It doesn't mean you never accept help. It doesn't mean you never allow someone to comfort you. It means you don't let your identity become defined by your breakdowns. You let your identity be defined by the way you rise after them. A man who truly values you doesn't need to know the exact limits of your strength. He only needs to see that no matter what comes, you keep standing. And here's the beautiful thing. When you guard your breaking point, you also protect the spark of mystery in your strength. He sees the storms you've been through, but he doesn't fully know how you've weathered them. He respects that there are layers to you that even he may never fully touch. That mystery isn't distance, it's depth. It's what keeps him seeing you as resilient, as graceful, as someone who can carry herself through the fire without having to be completely undone in front of him. So don't be afraid to keep that part of you private. Don't feel guilty for not letting a man see the exact places where you shatter, because what makes you powerful isn't that you never break. It's that you know how to protect the most fragile parts of yourself until they heal. And the man who truly deserves you will never need to see you collapse to believe in your strength. He'll only need to see the way you rise.